Tobago, tourism officials are calling the influx of Sargassum seaweed a natural disaster, citing the worst year for tourism ever. In traditionally perfect beaches in places like Cancun and Puerto Morelos, Mexican officials say they will need to hire nearly 5,000 additional workers to clean up the smelly mess, piled 10 feet high in places. From the eastern coast of Mexico to Barbados, there is an urgent cry for an answer to this troubling phenomenon, a cry echoed in Belize. These are the pristine beaches of La Isla Bonita, playground of the stars, and many, many thousands of tourists. But they're not looking quite so pristine in recent months, and it's because of this seaweed, which originates in the North Atlantic. It's an eyesore, and the usually fresh breezes coming off the reef now carry the stench of rotting seaweed. The town council has done what it can immediately to deal with the aesthetics by hiring extra staff to clean the beaches.
Affects the environment. If you were to go in the water, you would maybe find some small dead fish, just because you can't see it right now, but when it was at its worst, it would go for about 100 feet out. So those fish that would normally get to the edge and then go out, now get trapped. When it comes to tourism, it is a problem because of the stench. When it stays in the water, the seaweed that gets on the beach is not an issue. When it comes to stench, the one that stays on the water starts creating an unpleasant smell, and that is not nice for anybody, both for the residents or for the tourists that visit San Pedro.
The work by the council is largely futile, not for a lack of effort, but because there is just too much seaweed. This stretch of beach will be cleaned this evening and covered with seaweed by morning. For some enterprising residents, that's not exactly a bad thing. They've started loading up the Sargassum seaweed and using it for landfill, either for their own properties or for sale to anybody who needs it. The load in this truck would go for $40.
If I want one trip or two, I'll sell it, no problem, for full yard. You know, call my truck, I want truck I work for everybody. Or anybody. 1 cent pay me, I work. And I do work around and I fill my yard with it. I got my yard in San Mateo, where I fill up nicely.
That is a very common practice, actually. There's entrepreneurs all over San Pedro that they saw an opportunity, and they have their private trucks, and what they do, they'll come along and scoop up the sargasso that some of the town council employees have put in piles, and what they do, they take it to places like San Mateo, DFC, and use it for fill.
According to Deputy Mayor Gary Grief, the town council concentrates on the public areas, while resorts have used their own resources. Ramon's Village Resort has had to hire additional staff to keep its beaches clean. It's a full-time job, 7 days a week. Today, employees were doing one final cleanup before an event planned for later, and they're staying upbeat and making the best out of a potentially messy situation.
I don't think that anybody can be upset with nature. You know, this is something that is happening naturally. It's really not our fault. It's not the town council's fault or anything. And the fact that they see us battling the sargasso every day on a daily basis and increasing in staff, they kind of accept that and embrace it and are happy to see that we are doing something about it.
There's another very serious problem, much more serious than the stench or the aesthetics. The cleaning of the beaches is done with the best of intentions, but when the seaweed is picked up, it takes a lot of the beach with it, which leads inevitably to erosion.
The way we deal with it is the same individuals that are selling the sargasso, we've spoken to them and we've told them about the best practices, about how to get the sargasso from the beach onto the truck with minimal erosion. And we tend to use our employees to supervise that loading and unloading of sargasso.
One group of volunteers called Building a Beach, the brainchild of San Pedro resident Dimas Guerrero, is doing much more than that though. They've latched onto the idea of actually using the seaweed to build beaches. Volunteer Amber Edwards says the entire initiative is about bringing the community together to turn a months-long problem into a solution.
We dig trenches. The volunteers get in the water, they throw the sargasso up on the beach to dry for the next week. We take the dried sargasso from the week before, we put them in the trenches, we cover it with the white sand that's dug up. Basically what this does is it keeps the sand on the beach. When you clean the sargasso and remove it from the beach, it's great for landfill in other places. It's great for fertilizer if you're into composting or anything like that. But we want to keep some of it on the beach because there's less erosion. You know, you remove the sand from the beach, you're going to lose your beach.
And the innovative idea is actually working at this location near Journey's End in northern Ambergris Key, where the group has been working. In fact, it's been working so well that the town council has taken notice.
Him and his group are working every Sunday on building a beach because we understood that we can no longer be taking all the Sargasso out. So we have to be proactive and think outside the box. And actually, we've borrowed from their practices. We have 2 beach reclamation projects going on. It's basically finding an area that has extensive erosion, packing it with Sargasso, putting a layer of sand, waiting as it settles, putting more Sargasso, and just repeating the process on and on.
You don't have to do it here. You can do it on your own beach. Come out one weekend and see what it's about, and then do it on your own beach, or, you know, help us as we move along. We intend to get as many volunteers out in the next couple of weeks, because once we expand this beach, we want to move to another area.
In other tourism areas like Cancun and Puerto Rico, the sheer accumulation of seaweed which decomposes at the water's edge has caused real environmental concerns like significant fish kills. That hasn't become a concern in Belize just yet, and it is hoped that the Sargassum will disappear before it does. Mike